Okay. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Apparently not. Okay. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Can we all settle down so we can get started? So I'm Ilango from Dwara KGFS, and this is Professor Nandan Sudarshanam from IIT Madras. So today we are going to talk about a very exciting project that we have taken up at Dwara KGFS along with Professor Nandan's team at the Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at IIT Madras. Essentially, this is, many of you would know. Right. Okay, this is stuck. I'll just try to be louder. So, many of you would know about Dwara KGF's wealth management philosophy of how we, take decisions for customers and how we help them plan their financial goals. So we are typically different from other MFIs who are largely product-driven and trying to push loans or any other kind of products to customers. We instead take a holistic view of customers and their aspirations and try to help them plan for their financial goals. So for those who do not have details about how we go about doing this, I'll just give a brief overview. So essentially, our way of dealing with customers is when we first interact with customers, we go to their households, try to understand the demographic profile of the customers, gather information about their goals, aspirations, their various income streams, expenses, assets, liabilities, and try to get a complete picture of what the household is and what are their aspirations. Post this, this is essentially a diagnostic tool for the household. It tries to map all the assets, liabilities of the customers, what they're working towards, that needs to be covered to protect their income streams, to protect their goals. And essentially, we start a conversation with our customer saying, this is your household, and this is what we understand of you, and we can help you plan for your goals through the different products that we are offering. And that's where we try to make it as suitable to the customer and not try to push our business agenda, rather than that we try to make it as suitable to the customer so that it can enable them towards their goals. So the framework that we follow is called a Plan, Grow, Protect, Diversify framework to managing the household's financial well-being. Essentially, plan means cash flow management for the household through maybe unsecured loans, helping them plan for savings, trying to monetize their assets such as jewelry, etc. This is mainly a cash flow management kind of philosophy. Post that, once we understand that the household's cash flows are stable, we look at helping them grow their income sources. Can we give them an enterprise loan? Can we give them something to start a new business that will help them increase their income streams? That is the process that comes in the Grow framework. Next is Protect, essentially risk management for the households. So the primary wage earner, how do we cover for loss in income if anything happens to them? It could be an accident policy, it could be a long-term endowment policy, or a short-term hospi cash kind of policy where something happens to the customer, we try to protect their income. And finally, diversify. So in rural India, you find that most of the customers have assets logged in either jewelry or land, and very few of them participate in national assets such as markets, liquid funds, equity markets, and so on. So when the concept is when assets are in the local region, so the concentration of local assets makes it a bit risky for the customer. It always makes sense to get them diversify into national assets which are more liquid, which are somewhat resilient over time. So that's what we are trying to do with the diversified framework. So this is essentially a model of wealth management, and we built this over time. Managers trained on this philosophy, and to get them to speak to customers and develop this plan for them. So what we found over time is that this process of planning for the household is quite rigorous and requires a lot of knowledge and training for the wealth manager. They need to understand what are the different products are there. They need to interpret the customers' type, their aspirations, what they are working towards. And finally, while coming to product sale, it's very easy to sell the customer a simple loan product such as a JLG loan. But when you're trying to sell a solution that involves protection, diversification of their income streams, the sale process in itself becomes a little difficult. And end of the day, a product-driven approach is probably a little more easy for the wealth manager rather than trying to sell the solution package. And over time, as we are scaling up our business, as we are moving to new geographies, we are finding that the knowledge and ability to do this whole wealth management process is difficult to scale. We have a set of old employees who have been in our system for about 5-10 years. They are very highly skilled and really understand this process. But among the newer employees who joined us, there's a lot of attrition in this industry. So constantly training them to get this process done is quite difficult. So that scaling this philosophy is a challenge for us. And on the customer side also, we face some challenges. Again, as I said, a loan is easy to sell, but if you want to push a customer towards a product where they have to give us money in terms of maybe an insurance or putting it in a mutual fund, it's a very difficult sale. Although they know that it will help them in the future in some manner, it's very difficult when you go talk to them about different products and say, take an insurance, take a mutual fund. So overall, these are the couple of challenges that we face. So what we want to solve for through this project is how do we remove the subjectivity and judgment of wealth managers from the whole. We have a wealth of data and experience of wealth managers, and can we simplify it to those new staff or the ones in our system who have challenges in terms of driving business numbers, but they still need to understand our philosophy and understand our customers better. So can we use data and to help simplify this process for them? The second challenge is that we want to solve for is simplifying the solution in itself. How do we make it so easy to sell for both the wealth manager and the customer that it becomes a really intuitive process? That you don't have to push different products, you don't have to explain product features to both customers and wealth managers. Rather, it's something you sell something that is so simple that the uptake can be really high. So this is what we are trying to solve for. So on the first part, removing the subjectivity and decision and judgment from the wealth managers, we've been working with IITM on using data and the machine learning process to see how we can simplify that. I'll now hand it over to Nandan to explain what we've been doing on this front.
Hi, So, at the root of trying to have a customer-centric approach is to kind of understand the customer, right? So when you start with a customer-centric approach, when you say customer-driven, a key part of the business intelligence is, let me try and understand the customer. And at the root of trying to understand the customer is usually an exercise called customer segmentation. This is kind of bread and butter, not just in this field, but in almost any field where there are lots of customers. Customer segmentation is often done. And what that really means is, I have this sea of customers, and instead of just dealing with the sea as a whole, I broadly put the customers in groups. See, these are like, there are 5 groups of customers broadly I have. That makes a lot of business processes easy. It can allow for lots of business decision making of kinds. It can allow for very targeted interventions, right? So instead of me just saying, oh, I have customers, I have 5 groups of customers, 5 types of customers, right? So how do you go about kind of breaking them up? Well, the customers are described across a lot of features. So the customers are described based on, in our case, it's households. So perhaps the household profile, right? So how many members are there in a household? How many earning members are there in a household? What is the income of the household? So these are features associated with your customers. And so using these features, you can say, hey, these group of households look very similar. I'm going to treat them as a group. And here is another group, right? So broadly makes sense. Again, like I said, this is a very common exercise, except there is a slight problem with this approach, right? This is what in our field we say is it's clustering. Clustering is the more technical approach name. It broadly falls under something called unsupervised learning. You're using data, but you're using data to group without somebody telling you that's the right group, this is the wrong group. And therein lies the problem. There's nobody telling you this is the right way to group and that's the wrong way to group. Because, see, the algorithm itself is kind of brainless, right? It just says these households look similar. They look similar because they share these features. The features are very similar. But how do I know if these are important features or not? I may choose to create 2 groups because the number of households in this group are 4, 5, and the number of household, members in this household are 7, 8. And so I make a group. But perhaps grouping people by the number of people that are there in the household can be completely meaningless. It might be meaningless. So how do I know that when I create a group, that it's a sensible group? And for this reason, many times clustering as an approach will come up with an answer, but because it's unsupervised in that sense, nobody is coming and saying, these variables are important, these variables are not important. It winds up creating these groups that might make no business sense. So while we started off saying what we want to do is understand the customer better, and logically the ask kind of was saying, hey, can we do a customer segmentation exercise? A bit of conversation, and what I'm trying to motivate here is sometimes you kind of start with the hammer first approach, which is you name the methodology and go after it. I'm glad we kind of did the process that we did where the conversation went back and forth to realize that what you really need is sensible groups, not just a blind exercise in clustering or segmentation. So what we did, what we wound up doing, what we realized in a sense, was what makes a group a meaningful group and another group, what kind of a grouping makes sense, is we said, if there is a group of people for whom you would want to sell the same set of products, for whom you feel that this product portfolio is sensible, and for another customer, you wanted to change something about the product portfolio that you thought was sensible, then they should be called as 2 different groups. It doesn't matter that they had so many kids in the family, so many earning members, that their expense was so much, their income was this much. They could be very different, but you seem to be thinking that both of these households deserve the same, are best suited to have the same set of products. And so, instead of thinking of this as a clustering exercise of similarity and dissimilarity, let us think of it as a classification, as a breakdown, and again a sense of grouping on the basis of which product portfolios are best suited for which set of people. And if you have a set of people for whom you believe that this product portfolio is ideally suited, they become the basis for the group. They become the group, in a sense. And so that is the kind of new approach that we took, which is to actually look at the typical, the same features. We're still going to look at those features such as income, expense, family size, and so on. But if we can take all of these features and therefore recommend a product portfolio, then can we take everybody for whom a product portfolio was recommended and call them the group? Right? So this is that kind of rule-driven approach. This is an alternate approach that we decided to adopt. Okay. So we started this exercise, and then we soon realized again that perhaps this is again not taking the hammer first approach. We said perhaps this is not a data science problem at all. Perhaps this is not a machine learning problem at all. Why? Because you can take a set of features and customers and realize that based on ideas from financial engineering, from common sense, fundamental principles, that you can come up with a set of rules which say for this household this product portfolio is suited. In which case the rules themselves determine which product portfolio and therefore the group. So where is the learning from the data coming? Because all you have is a set of rules, right? And we were very comfortable with that solution because again our goal was not to use a particular methodology but to actually sit and try and create sensible groups. But it turns out that what happened in our particular case is that we have a lot of availability of data on the customer household demographic front. We have a little lesser information on the credit bureau front, and we have fairly limited data on the customer goals front, right? And we realized that from a lot of conversation that customer goals are a critically important factor in deciding what product portfolio is suited for a particular household, right? And yet that is something where we have very limited data on. So what do we do here? So our approach has been the following. I don't think you can see this part, but that's supposed to be something called a decision tree. And that is something that has been learned from the data. But what we do is, we took these rules and we took these households. I believe there were about some 30,000 or 40,000 households which had explicit customer goals. And we said, using these customer goals, which is a much needed input to decide what products are needed, and we would map the products again using the plan, grow, protect, diversify. So for now, I'm going to use those words synonymously. I'll soon tell you how we match them. But instead we said each household, based on their goals, based on their demographics, you can say they have a certain plan, grow, protect, diversify score. Okay, pretty soon I'm going to tell you how that maps to products. That will be in the next slide. So now each household has this, and so for the households where the goals were known, we created this mapping using fundamental rules. So no machine learning, no data science, none of that. So you have a plan, grow, protect, diversify score using simple rules that have been vetted more from industry experts and domain experts for these households. But the problem is, you want to apply this for households which don't have these goals as well. So this is where a machine learning model comes in. A supervised learner is something where if you give it some data set, historic data set, it can learn a connection between the variables and can be applied on other variables. So while we use the rules to get the plan, grow, protect, diversify scores, we use that to create the output, which is those scores, and then we hide the goals. Why? Because I don't expect to have my goals for the remaining 3 lakh, 5 lakh customers. Tomorrow when I go to the field and I try to say, this should be your plan, grow, protect, diversify score, I might be in an environment where I don't have your goals. But can I learn your goals? See, a goal might be something like, I need to save for my daughter's wedding, which is an explicit goal, and great, I can use the rules to figure out my plan, grow, protect, diversify. But shouldn't I be able to learn that goal without you telling me that goal if I have a daughter who is at a certain age, approximately? Is there a correlation? So this is precisely what we learn. We use the goals to create the rules, then hide the goals, and then we use all the other demographic variables that are available. and learn a decision tree which learns from the demographics. And in other words, it is looking at the correlation structure between the demographic variables and the goals that you typically tend to have based off of your demographics, right? And so now you have a classifier which is a complex, which is a decision tree, and now we don't even need the goals, we have scores for everybody, okay? And I'm happy to take questions towards the end perhaps, and clarify this part if it's a little confusing. Okay, so what we've done is now we have scores. We've got plan, grow, protect, diversify scores. This is great, but how do you go from scores to products? Or rather, how do you go from scores to product portfolios? Because it's not each product, but you need to recommend a combination of products, right? So this is where what we do is we have now scores for your entire customer base, and we don't, a plan score is just a score, right? We arbitrarily had rules which said if the person has a short-term goal and has an expense so much and a surplus so much and blah, 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 give him 2 points on the plan scale. Subtract 1 point on the growth scale. But what is a plan score of 15? It has no meaning in the real world. So we need to understand how scores map to actual product portfolios. This is where we bring in wealth managers. We don't speak the plan, grow, protect, diversify language to them, but instead we give them cases of households and say, what products will you give to them? We know that we have a plan, grow, protect, diversify score for that household. And now I have a second layer of learning, which is for which plan, grow, protect, diversify. So for which score of plan do I decide when to give a product and when not to? And I know this because I have spoken to the wealth managers. Again, in an ideal world, I would like to speak to the wealth managers about all the 5 lakh households that are there. But that is not feasible. So what we do is we use some techniques from experimental design where we cherry pick, very carefully cherry picked, and we cherry picked 100 households, and I'll explain how this worked. We cherry picked 50 households that had such diversity in the plan, grow, protect, diversify scores, right? So you're not giving 2 identical households and asking the wealth manager for what products. You're going to get the same answer, right? So you want to give a very diverse households so that you learn as much as possible from the limited time of the wealth manager. So we cherry picked 50 households like that, where we don't disclose the plan, grow, protect, diversify score. We give them the demographic profile of the house as a whole and ask them, would you recommend this plan product? Would you recommend this grow product? Would you recommend? And so we use the answers from that, and we also did something called a reverse query. We did this thing where you would give a product portfolio and say, give me a typical household. So it's like learning both ways, right? You want to create that connection as strongly as possible. And it also serves as a validation set, in a sense. So are we just arbitrarily answering, or what's going on? And so using the answers from the wealth manager, we are able to say things like, it looks like in general, when the plan score is above 15, they tend to give out plan products. And when it's less than 15, they're not giving out any plan products. Although they were never told what the plan score was. Right? They were only told, this is the household, they have so many people, this is their age, this is the blah blah. Okay? So we make the connection between households and product portfolios this way with the wealth managers. I'll have Vinango continue on how we are integrating this with the framework.
So the implication of doing it this way is, now the wealth manager, when he is enrolling the customer, he collects a bunch of data, the demographics, number of members in the household, income streams, asset streams, etc. So the subjectivity of the wealth manager in understanding this household is removed. So when this household's data is captured in the back end, we know that it matches to a certain profile. That means for this profile, a certain set of, a certain portfolio of products may be suitable, right? So the first part where we want to simplify the understanding of the customer is solved for in this framework. What next? So now, how do we simplify the solution? So we know how this is the type of customer, this is the sort of product portfolio that would suit them. But now we need to simplify the sale process as well. And for sale process, the first linkage is the goals. So this is a customer profile that we understood by delinking the goals. Now we go back to the customer and ask them, what are your goals? What are you working towards? Goals here means something like, 1 year down the line, I want to send my daughter to private school. 3 years down the line, I want to get my elder daughter married. All of these involve cash outflows, right? So we need to understand, what are the goals that the customer has, and also try to gauge from them how much of their surplus, which is their income minus all the expenses, including their loan repayments, how much of them that are they willing to save, either with us or any other fashion. So that surplus is what will help them work towards their goals, right? And once we know this, we have a set of products on our side, right? So we have, obviously we have loan products. We are working towards getting a mutual fund product, an RD product, and different protection products, a short-term term life kind of product, long-term endowment kind of product. So all these involve some sort of investments by the customer, and we do understand the mix of products that could help them achieve the right return to maximize the achievability of their goals. So we know that the cash flows, outflows come at a certain point of time. This is what they need to save. How do we maximize the return for the household? By putting it in the right bucket of portfolio, maybe create an efficient portfolio for them, and also ensure that the goals are protected through some insurance products. So this is what we are trying to do. And the design is very simple. So we tell the customer, this is your surplus, you probably save a bit of it with us or all of it with us, and if these are your 3 goals, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, if you save a lot of your surplus with us, we'll make sure that you achieve all 3 goals. If you're not willing to save so much, we'll try to maximize as much, maybe 1 goal, 2 goals we are able to solve for you. So that is the sort of design that we are thinking about. And in terms of sale, how does that translate? Let me give an example. I don't know if you can read this, but let me just quickly run through it. So we are taking a profile of one of our customers in Tanjavur. So her name is Pushpam. She lives with the husband, Parnivel, and 2 daughters, Chitra and Sindamarai. So Chitra is in school, Sindamarai is about to go to college, is graduating from college, and this household saves about 4,000 rupees a month. And they have a bunch of goals. So next year, Pushpam wants to send Chitra to high school, which will involve an outflow of about 50,000 rupees. And a year after that, she would be entering college. That would also involve some kind of outflow. Few years down the line, she wants to get Sindamarai married off, which may involve a higher kind of outflow. So how do we design a solution for this kind of household? One, first obviously is understanding the goals and the time frames, and gauge from the customer, what are your initial savings that you want to put towards this goal, and what are your monthly surplus that you're willing to allocate. And from our customer segmentation algorithm, we can, understand the profile of this customer and what would be suitable products under the Plan, Grow, Protect, Diversify framework. And then, through our analysis of what is the maximum return along with the protection features that we want to give this customer, we could recommend a portfolio which says, 70% of your surplus we'll allocate towards liquid fund, 20% towards recurring deposit, which builds up towards your longer term goal, and some amount in savings bank that builds liquidity so that in times where your income is gone or your expenses increase, we can take care of a bit of that. So this is the sort of portfolio we can build for the customer, and then we give them 3 options. So this household has a surplus of 4,000 rupees. So let's say they save the entire 100% of the surplus with us. Now looking at the various product allocations and the portfolio returns over time and the outflows for various goals, we could tell the customer that if you save so much with us, we will make sure that you achieve all 3 goals. That is the pitch to the customer. you give us this much amount every month and we'll make sure that you achieve all 3 goals. Let's say the customer is not willing. 4,000 is a bit too much for them to save. Let's say they may be willing to save, say, 3,000 with us. Then we tell them, okay, that's still good enough. We will help you get to goal 1 and goal 2. Goal 3 may be a little unachievable, a bit lower. Then again, the pitch becomes, we will take you to your short-term goal. We'll make sure you achieve that. And let's think about it later. Now, what this does is, it creates a sort of savings behavior for the customer. And it helps them think about using these savings for a longer-term goal. And what it also tries up is, let's say, in this scenario, the customer can achieve all 3 goals. But in these 2 scenarios, there are some shortfalls. But we know over time that this customer has a good behavior of saving with us. So in the end, if there is a shortfall of their final goal, we could supplant that, or we could help them achieve that goal by giving them a credit boost. So that's the sort of solution that we are thinking towards. So the customer, in any situation, we can help them achieve their goals. As I spoke in the beginning, so the whole project is intended to do 2 things. One is simplifying the customer understanding. We are completely removing the judgment of the wealth manager. Wherever the wealth manager doesn't have experience to understand how to fit this customer in a particular profile, we are removing that through the algorithm that Nandan discussed earlier, and simplifying the solution sale. So for the wealth manager, it's very easy to tell the customer. The product essentially becomes an EMI-like solution for the customer, right? So when you're selling a loan, you tell the customer that I'm going to give you 25,000 now. Every month you repay 2,000 till your loan is over. This is sort of a proxy for that kind of product. The wealth manager just has to tell the customer, you save so much with us every month, we work towards your goal. And the customer also, for the customer, it's very easy to understand. He doesn't need to know what is a mutual fund. He doesn't need to know the difference between various insurance products. Rather, he just needs to say, every month I give 2,000 rupees to KGFS and they'll take care of my goals. So that's what we're trying to work towards. And in terms of broad framework, we are there. In the next couple of months, we'll be doing our tech integration, getting our product partnerships in place, and we'll be rolling out the solution. So we wanted to present it now and probably get feedback from the crowd and or any other questions that you have. So that's it from our side. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So again, this is in product design, right? So we need to find the product that is best suited for the customer.